So, thank you for tuning in. This is another installment of Team Chris Talks, and this is very special to me. I am joined here by one of my favorite members of the fighting game community. Not just awesome as a person to talk to and gain insights from and learn from in terms of the history of retro games, modern games, as well as like anime. But I'll be honest with you, Cookie, I am terrified of seeing you in bracket. Like
Oh,
you have sent me to losers or out of the tournament on some of my best days. Like I have medals that like of the proudest, greatest days of my life, and on those days you kicked my ass. But also at the same time, I've also had the pleasure and privilege of doing commentary on top eights that you've made in games like Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, Street Fighter Alpha 2, Capcom vs. SNK 2. I mean, really some of the, mount some of the mountains, the seven summits of retro fighting games you've made it with. Welcome to Team Chris Talks.
no, thank you for having me. I don't think I hardly have anybody ever reach out to me in the community like that because even to this day, I think people look at me and they kind of see me as an enigma or they see me as this odd person. And so I've been around since the beginning, even before the beginning. And I kind of just created my own little fortress and my own little cornerstone. And that cornerstone is open to anyone who's willing to step off the beaten path for me to introduce it to them free of charge, and in a space that is unjudgmental.
I want to reach into that because I've always said, and when people ask me about like one like about not when people ask, but when I look at you, and when I ask how did you kick my ass so much, I mean, you and I, we love the same characters. Rose, Chun-Li,
Yes.
even in Mortal Kombat, Katana. But I've
Yes,
always when
it's
you
funny. I have a special story for all those women, especially the top three that have carried me in a spiritual sense to this very day. What got me into competitive fighting games and all of that.
you're preaching to the choir here. I mean, and I can't help but deeply agree with that. And but you that connection I feel because I'm always like, wow, you have a deeper connect you have a deeper reach into the bag with these characters than I have. And so not only that, but I remember there would be top eights where I'd commentate and go, that's who you're picking? You're going with that? Like I've seen some counter picks you've made, notably 2019 Defend the North, Capcom vs. SK2 top eight. You were cooking with Vice, which is which was such a unique experience for me to watch. And but at the same time, I've seen you turn it over. Like I've seen you in Third Strike using Elena and excelling with it. But then when the time is right, you bust out that Chun Li and you show that you're the alpha, one of the alphas with the Fellowship of the Thighs. And not only that, like I've seen you win with Chun Li without Hoyokusen Super Art 2. You're the one who taught me to use Kikosho against Hugo in that matchup. And you know what? You know what? I've said it to people that Cookie taught me that counter pick, that counter build, rather, and people have said, "Okay, yeah, but that's Cookie. I mean, like Cookie's just out there." And I'm like, "But it works."
So you let's actually let's go from there. You mentioned three of some of my most beloved and main characters. Elena from the Street Fighter 3 series.
Coming
We
soon
could
to
get we
six.
could and you're right. We'll get to that in a later on. You mentioned Vice from the KOF series. And then you mentioned Rose. So I'd say let's kind of start with those three, the origins, what happened, how did I get them there? And I guess the Japanese like to go with the current and go backwards. So respecting the Japanese mode of things, I'll go with the current and then go backwards.
Yes.
Elena was introduced, as we know, in New Generation back in 1997. I came a little bit late to the party towards the mid half of 1997 when a friend of mine bought a video gaming book back in those days we looked at. Electronic Gaming Monthly, we looked at Game Pro, we looked at tips and tricks, and that was our window into knowing what was coming next, what's the next video game for
Same thing
whatever
with me.
console.
Tips and
And then
tricks,
the co-
especially. Yeah, I had a
and then
subscription.
the console world, what's going to be consoleized, what's coming to the console later this year and what to expect. And Street Fighter 3 had this great spread. So I'm like, what? We're getting a Street Fighter 3? So I automatically thought, Chun-Li, Chun-Li. I was like, yes, yes, and during those times, I was in grade school. I was going to gym. I was doing cartwheels, pretending I was doing spinning bird kick. I was play fighting with my friends because we wanted to be the characters that we played in those games. So when I didn't see Chun-Li in the Street Fighter 3 lineup, I fucking flipped. Let me tell you, I was like, what? I said, so who are the new ladies? Who are the new women? And there was Ibuki at the time who was all covered up, this ninja girl that everyone kept talking about. And I didn't play Street Fighter 3 yet. And then I saw Elena and I said, oh my God, this is like the first black woman of Street Fighter. I'm like, we're getting a black woman? It was unheard of at the time. A melanated female, unheard of. So when I finally got to the arcade in my neighborhood, which a lot of machines were in pizza stores, they were in pizza shops, they were in sandwich shops like Blimpies on the East Coast. It was a big thing to go to the pizza shop or to Blimpies or to the corner
My
store.
pizza shop had an Alpha 2 cabinet, and that was actually where I first played Alpha 2. I was 7 years old, so I do have fond memories of that.
So I went to Blimpies to play Street Fighter 3 New Generation. And so it's funny, I picked Ibuki first, but I was not feeling her. And then I picked Elena and something just clicked. And at the time I didn't even know that's how you pronounced her name. I was calling her Elena. Some people were calling her Alina. Like nobody really even knew how to pronounce her name at the time. So it was something between Elena and Alina before, Capcom kind of set the record straight and said, no, it's Elena.
Can I can I chime in and give you one that's I think is even worse for me on my side?
Sure.
All
Yeah,
right, first fighting game I ever owned in the house was Virtual Fighter 2 because it came out with the Sega Saturn. It was fantastic, loved it, was
it
addicted
was. I
all
still
this
got my
time.
copy. It's
Yeah,
over there behind me. Yep. I got it. Yeah.
all this time I was referring to Kage as Cage. And
Oh
it
yeah.
would go through Virtual Fighter 3, it would go through Virtual Fighter 4, and it wasn't really until Sega made those actual this whoever was the Sega community manager was making guides, video guides for Virtual Fighter Final Showdown when it came out on PS3. And I specifically remember all of a sudden he goes Kage, like the Kage guide came up, and I wasn't maining Kage. My best friend in childhood mained Kage, and now I main Kage in Virtual Fighter 5 Rebo to spite him. But actually, me and Kage get along. And it's what's funny is that yeah, so that naming convention, I mean, it went on for I would say 1996 until 2013, which I think via Final Showdown came out for the PS3. Was it 2013? Oh, it might have been 2010, 2011. The dates fail me. I'm pushing 40. So, but yeah, that naming convention. So I called Kage Cage. Everybody called Kage Cage. It's so flow that I knew.
We all
We,
did
we all
actually.
yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that.
And
Um
but when I started picking her at the time, I continued to use her even though most people don't know this was like the true original version of her. She only had three moves, and because I would immerse myself like a comic book lover, I immersed myself to my games from a comic book perspective and from a performing arts perspective. Because I tell people I'm a performing artist before I am a competitive player. And so I found a middle ground to merge the two. And that's how my community at home in the Bronx in New York knew me as, oh, he is this person that comes and plays these games and he's singing the music and he's acting out the moves in real life and he's doing all of this. I became the a person who has been doing this longer than me, who people know in the old school movies of the 80s and the 90s was it was an African American dude from Police Academy who would actually play the Atari and he would make all the noises and the sounds with
Michael
the game.
Winslow? Talking
Yeah,
about Michael
him.
Winslow? Yeah, yeah,
Uh-huh.
Michael Winslow.
I'm a version of him, but for fighting games.
Mm,
And so he does it with Space Invaders and with racing car games and with platform games. I do it with hack and slash and fighting games,
right.
you know. And so I'm basically like another version of him. Um, and I started that with Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat 2, and it just kind of continued onward ever since. But anyway, getting back on track. Um, that's how I started with Elena in 1997 with New Generation. And I worked through only three moves that she had at the time, which was the mullet smash, the spinning lathe. So the original name of the move was spinning lathe, but people know it as scratch wheel. But the book,
Mm,
I go by the original literature. And to this day, I still give respect and homage to the literature, the original books of tips and tricks and EGM and Game Pro. The her DP was originally called spinning lathe, which is a knife, spinning knife kick, which is her DP. And then Rhino Horn. Those were the three moves she had. And then of course in 98 when Second Impact came out, I continued to work with her. And at the time, I spent so many quarters, so many dollars. I must have spent hundreds of dollars trying to understand her mechanics because she just did not, at the time, I felt had the tools to really battle people the same way they could battle her.
right.
So I had to really understand the mechanics of parry, the mechanics of punishment. She made me really rework how I approached Street Fighter in the CPS3 system. Because to really be successful with her in New Generation and Second Impact, you really had to learn how to bait people into doing certain moves. So I became really well playing Shoto characters because people loved Ken and Ryu,
I think you
and
should always practice a Shoto character. Like, regardless if you main, 4 or 5 years ago, I said every fighting game I practice, I will always pocket a Shoto. Like CVS2, my Shoto Sakura. SF6, I'm about to reach Master with Akuma. SF5, I was Sakura. SF4, Dan. In other games, I'm Ryu. Sometimes I have a Ken. Alpha 2 and Super Turbo. I love Ken, new Ken. Third Strike, I actually developed Ryu and actually got wins at the Evo 2024 tournament. Most of my wins were actually with Ryu, and I almost got out of pools with him because for some reason I wasn't hitting Super R2 with Chun Li. It was one of those days, so I just switched. But just to divert, I love that you pointed it out because I was telling people you should always have a Shoto in your pocket, basically. So I just wanted to agree with you on that.
so well, I learned how to know the matchup with everyone in the game, and I said I really want to be good with this lady. There's no excuse, there's no workaround. This is the 90s at the time. I'm going to have to spend the time, the energy, and the quarters. And so I would often wait behind a line of 10 people only to get my ass busted in seconds to go right back
Mm,
around to that 10-person line to do it all over again to say, okay, this didn't work. Let me try this. What can I do?
right.
And people look at me like I'm this redundant idiot of insanity. Why are you picking somebody that is worthless? She was considered completely and utterly worthless at the time. And I said, well, I really like this lady's story, which segues into the overall theme of, low class characters or characters that are considered low tier.
Low tier,
I
yeah.
pick my characters based upon a spiritual and emotional connection.
Yes.
No matter how whack they may seem in the fighting game, there is something in their story, in their backdrop, in their dialogue, and who they are that speaks to me as an individual in real time and in real life. And therefore, I pick my characters based upon how I see myself in real time. And this manifests through the actions of gameplay and me connecting spiritually with that character. I am an extension of that. And in the 90s, the fighting games were pretty much straightforward and cut and dry.
Right.
This is about, can your optics match your hand play and being able to do things in a certain amount of time when you have the opportunity. The concept of plus and minus moves didn't really exist until later. And so this was more of your visual skill, your optical skill, and your hand skill, and matching those up while playing.
Yeah, I'll
and
tell you
getting that and
this.
getting that reward. Hmm.
I'll tell you this, Cookie. You've actually like hit it so much on the head, and I wanted to make that point. I want to bring this up that when I was originally I was a DDR player, as you
Hmm.
see. So I got this trophy here,
Love
World
DDR.
Champion.
My friend got me into DDR.
That's my freestyle trophy behind me. I'm
Mhm.
pointing at.
Yes.
And
Oh,
so
I see it.
freestyle champion,
So
yeah.
freestyle double pads or single?
Double. I mean, I played
Okay.
double because, sometimes you playing single, people would jump on the pad with you, and I'd have to kick them with my freestyle moves.
Oh, they like to
But
shadow you. Yeah.
yeah, I hate that, especially when freestyling. It's annoying in general. I just hate shadowing in general in DDR. So double was like my way to kind of be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, stage is mine, right? Showtime.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to play with a friend who was kind of a mentor. He was an older player. Um, and I still see him to this day, actually. When I go to some tournaments, I'll see him playing Magic the Gathering. He's a judge. Tall, black dude with glasses, awesome person. And he
Mm-hmm.
played every Marvel vs. Capcom game as Mega Man. And then he also played all the Alpha games as Rose. And when Street Fighter 4 came out, as a homage to him and his teachings to me in DDR and Street Fighter, I wanted Rose in my life. So I said, I'm going to dedicate everything I can to learning all the Street Fighter I can to do it through Rose. And I couldn't, like, just like they told you the same thing. Dead character,
Uh-huh.
it's a console exclusive character, not completely fleshed out. It's still
Uh-huh.
vanilla SF4. I don't have those routes into Ultra 1 for 60% health that Vanilla Sagat has. The
Uh-huh.
matchup with Rufus, forget it. Backdash and pray. And then,
That's right.
using those same mechanics and that broken backdash she's had since day one, Luffy wins Evo, and then next thing you know, I'm living the rest of SF4's legacy being told I'm carried by Rose. And that's fantastic. But what I loved about it is that spiritual connection pushed me and motivated me to learn the plus and minus situations, to learn what I can get away with, to learn what I can punish, to learn how much I have to punish. And it really led on with that. And I feel that there are players, I feel that there's nothing wrong with
Mhm.
approaching a fighting game that way because you're driven by that passion and you have that hunger. Whereas I feel if you're being forced to just do, as Sanford Kelly would say, pick a top tier, you can get bored because if you're just only told that Sagat is the way and you weren't meant to be a tiger, you were meant to be a turtle.
Mhm.
Like one of those directions basically, you're going to get
Right.
bored, you're going to get discouraged, and you may not have the passion that then translates into the work ethic that will carry you further into fighting games. And you
Mhm.
make it you made an excellent point there, Cookie. I can't stress it enough.
And so I take that mantra and I've carried it throughout all games that I've played, including fighting games, or what I like to call martial arts games, actually. Yeah, they're fighting games, but when you look at the central theme to everything, the central theme to all of the core stories that these are all martial artists. And in many cases, depending on the fighting game that you're playing, those martial artists represent certain real life people that have once lived, but they've been glorified digitally in a game that we're representing a piece of them. Samurai Spirits is a great example of that, but story for
Yes.
another day. But I just wanted to
Can
put
I
that
can I
out there.
just ask you just right quick because you mentioned it's martial art game. Would you include beat 'em ups like kind of as a similar nature or within there? I
Well,
love you.
beat 'em ups come with, yeah, beat 'em. I love beat 'em ups too. You know, Final Fight
My
and
favorite
Streets of
genre.
Rage,
Streets of Rage, you're
and
speaking
now
my
the
language.
and now the modern day stuff like what is it with those girls that are trying to save their boyfriends but
River
they
City
can't.
Girls is
River City Girls.
fantastic.
Thank you. I know the
Fantastic. Yeah.
storyline, but I forgot the name in a moment.
I
You
forgot
know,
that how do you say the franchise in Japanese? Because it's like River City Ransom. It's been there for like a minute.
yes, that is, you said it right. It was really, the original name was River City Ransom, and the original game I think was for like NES or something.
It
I
was a
have
gem
to,
for the NES. Yeah.
yes.
An
And so
absolute gem.
with the beat 'em up games, they have a central theme of they're trying to bring law and order and equilibrium and stabilism back into their communities by getting rid of the bad guys that have created utter chaos. So that's kind of, they all share that similar theme, even Double Dragon, they all have that same concept or theme. Side scrollers is just an offshoot of like Gunstar Heroes and Cuphead, the other side scroller beat 'em up games, but
You have
it's
such
not
great
so involved.
taste.
Hmm?
You have such great taste. I love it. You're talking. Okay, okay. Let me go
Oh
to the
yeah, I
next
love I
question.
love all that stuff.
That's why I have you here. That's why I'm like I gotta get Cookie on Team Chris Talks. You're a first round pick, and it's paying off. Going into this next question is how does these characters, the low tier characters, how do you feel it provides you with like greater freedom for creativity rather than like just following through the standard meta?
So I never looked at those characters as low tier to begin with. They're
Hmm.
considered low tier based upon the type of power and output and advantages versus disadvantages that they have when in high level competitive gameplay. I've gotten as far as I've gotten because I love the spirituality behind everything and I'm able to make these characters work. They've been discounted and underestimated because they don't have the tools that the particular people that are playing that want to win the games based upon money and incentives cater to them. I'm not
Facts.
catering to that audience, I'm catering to the love of the characters and their storylines and what they bring in their dialogue and the personalities to the games. I'm coming at it from a very artistic perspective. So they never appear to me as low tier. Because if you really truly think about it, you put in the time, the hours, and the energy, you will know the matchup and what you need to do in specific situations against other characters that are considered overpowered to them. Case in point, when Street Fighter 3 came out and it came out with the system of selecting your super art, that was the Japanese really giving us the hidden messages of being able to approach the situation from a different angle. They wanted you to come in the game as a digital martial artist. These characters are martial artists, and these are the selection of their super arts that they have at this iteration of their character at this point in time, who they are now in the storyline. Say, you mentioned Chun-Li in Third Strike. Her three super arts is Hyokusen, actually Kikosho's first and
Kosho.
Hyokusen, and then Tenshinrenka, which is the Angel Slam, you know, and I use all three arts.
You
And
use the Heavenly Hazan. I call it the Heavenly Hazan shoe.
yeah, I do. In fact, I use that on Hugo before I used Kikosho.
Oh
And
wow.
in fact, my preferred choice against, the Hong Kong twins, Yin and Yang, which is, the very embodiment of light and dark,
Hmm.
or the grandsons of Gin. But yes,
Where do the rollerblades fit in that?
well, that's how they accentuate their style.
Yeah.
The rollerblades is just part of his style. There's nothing special to it.
Right.
That's how they separate who they are. Yoon for I think it's Yoon that wears the rollerblades, right? If I'm right?
No, Yang. Yang wears the
Yeah, Yang.
rollerblades. Yun's a
Yeah.
skateboarder.
Yoon is a skateboarder. They both have their different styles when it comes to wheels, but they all do something similar. They both work for Gin's, Chinese restaurant, and the way those wheels come into play in the story is that how do they make the Chinese food deliveries faster? One just chose rollerblades over the skateboard, and it became a rival between the two. An inner pun that when you read the Udon comic books, they address it lightly. The older comic books before Udon was given the license to rehash everything and give it definitiveness,
Hmm.
address the same story as well. Who can go make the fastest deliveries, and it came from, the skateboard versus the inline rollerblades. That's
Uh,
the reference. But the not the actual, the for the casual player, they won't know that unless they spend time to read the books.